So it sounds like Europe is doomed for.
The other parties have an agreement. No, everything but that, which is quite strange, because it's like you delete millions of votes.
You cannot do this. We don't have free speech in that sense.
Communism and all of that massacred more people throughout history than anything else.
It's different. The Europe really is like a cake that everybody wants to get a piece of.
The biggest forcing function for progress and improvement and wealth creation and freedom and individual power is actively being suppressed. Actively being suppressed because of irrational regulation.
If you look at the architecture, if you look at what has happened before, scientific stuff, cultural stuff, all of that, how are we letting that disappear? That's my thing. Like for years, I'm asking myself the time and time again, like, how are we letting this thing get destroyed?
The people on the surface are the ones that really strong arm everything in the end. And we have the deciding powers in our hands.
So we have a very fascinating discussion today. We had an election in November in the States with Trump. We've had a few media things that have happened with Elon Musk specifically that, let's say, have caused some noise in the last few days. But I think all of these things that are happening right now in the Western world, specifically in the United States, is giving us a lot of clues and a lot of signals to what could be happening in the rest of the world. And in this discussion, I really want to focus on Europe. Like, what are the dynamics that are happening in Europe coming out of the election, coming out of that big media splash that Elon made with his speech, which, with his quote unquote salute, that may have had some implications in Europe. And I have two people from Europe, from the continent, that are deeply familiar with the media landscape. They cover the Musk space very closely, which is sort of tangential to the politics space now with Trump. So I want to hand it over to each one of these folks to introduce themselves. So we'll go kind of in order here. I'll give it to Jan, brief introduction, and then we'll go to Neil, brief introduction, and we'll get the conversation started.
So I'm Jan. I live in Europe, in South Germany to be exact. And I run a small YouTube channel as well about Tesla, indicated by the name TeslaFix. I've followed through this discussion. It was interesting to see what was happening there, and what's going on right now, because it's the tides are turning. Things change pretty quickly. We've seen so many innovations in the US in the last time, but also some kind of a decline. I was in San Francisco, and you know what I mean if I say what I mean with decline, because I saw a 12-year-old tweaking around, for example, on the street and stuff like this. It was a harsh reality to see. Also, homelessness everywhere. It was crazy to see that, because I wasn't so long ago in the US, especially there in San Francisco. So this changed a lot. And so crazy times here also with the elections that we have in Germany soon. And that's just my brief overview of the topic and myself. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but
No, you're good. You're German. It's okay. You're allowed. Go ahead, Neil.
So I'm Neil, the couch investor who's yet to feature on the couch, but that will happen in the future. I'm actually Jan's neighbor from Belgium. Similar colors in our flags. We actually had an election last year in, I think, June. Still no government. If you Google one of the countries with the best records of elections and then no governments, Belgium will probably pop up there twice with, I think, over 500 days without a government. So that's great. I'm maybe less optimistic, but all in all, I mean, I'm very optimistic about the US future right now. Europe, a lot of things need to change before we can actually see a huge acceleration in growth, less regulation, all of that. I know Donald Trump did talk about that at Davos. He had some friends in the audience, according to him. So we'll see what happens in the next 12 months. I think a lot of things will change.
Awesome. And kind of where I want to kick off this discussion. So Hans and I were very excited to sit down with you all and talk about this. It's twofold. There's two things I have in mind and of course, where the conversation goes. So the media landscape in Europe, which I think is a direct, it's almost like the fuel source for the economic and political conditions in that region as well. So it's kind of like the media is the ground level of understanding the flow of information, and then the politics and the economics are a result of the media landscape. Is sort of how I view this, and I could be wrong, but that's how I view this. So let me start with the media landscape, and I'll start with you specifically, because Elon Musk did something that perhaps in Germany might be viewed a little weird, right? That, you know, there's been a lot of drama in the States, less than I expected, honestly, from mainstream media. But I'm curious to hear this quote unquote salute that Elon did, which I think anybody who is looking at it honestly could say that it had nothing tied to the Nazi salute or whatever. It was just a simple, weird, you know, my heart goes out to you that gets misinterpreted kind of thing. But I'm really curious to hear from your perspective in Germany. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Your perspective on that thing. And we'll start there. Like the media landscape. How are they treating this is really the core question.
Yeah, what can I say? They're treating this exactly how they want to treat this. And that's, of course, saying that it was a salute. Because it's more about the way, the intensity that he did is the key here. Like the way when it would be softer like this, like a waving kind of motion or a softer motion. That's the thing. But it's ridiculous in itself. If you watch the speech, you don't have any indication about that happening. And I want to highlight here, if you've seen Elon's great dance moves in China, for example, and stuff like this, this guy he's on the spectrum. He's different. He moves differently. It's not, you know what I mean? I'm not saying that it's just that's the way he moves. It's different, I would say. And he was very excited, especially when he's excited. You can see that he's like very explosive in his movements, kind of. That's what I mean. I mean, I was going too much into detail about this, analyzing it and stuff like this, and I don't see that he wasn't dog whistling or whatever people are saying. It's ridiculous. I think it was my heart goes out to you like this, but he was like, oh yeah, he was pumped. He was super pumped. So German media treated this the way that you also expected probably how they would treat it. And it was like this because we are in an election right now, and it's exactly about this topic. The established parties are fearing the AfD, for example, that is more right-wing, and in some cases even some people of that party are even more extreme than that. So it's a little bit different. It's more than conservative, let's just say that. But that's what they now want to have, this narrative before the election, obviously. They want to see like, oh yeah, he did a Nazi salute. We're absolutely against it. Right, guys? Right, guys? So let's just vote for the established parties again. So that's my opinion on that. So,
Neil, what are you seeing from your perspective?
No, I agree. Also, when I saw it, I was like, come on, Elon. Now I have to spend hours explaining to folks that will send me the same picture over and over again. No, this is look at the clip, not the video. And then I start sending them pictures of Obama and Hillary and all of the other still images that also have that strange arm movement. Plus there was that video today that popped up with that Macron did exactly the same thing like this,
yes,
much slower. So, okay, it should have been a little bit slower. But then again, we know Elon, he's very excited. Previously he started jumping like Super Mario on stage with Donald Trump. So, okay, the usual explanations, but the media, if you can write Elon Musk and Nazi or something like that, they'll run with it 24/7, right? Because it gets you clicks, it gets people pumped. There is already, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, we hate them because, well, they don't really like us. We like to be in our comfort zone, blah, blah, blah. So it's the usual stuff. And then it's up to people like us, I guess, to start sending them links through X, not through Reddit, because we're banned there. We're banned. But yeah, it's always the same. Me personally, I rarely watch mainstream media on TV or even go on their website because it's like I know already what's going to happen. So I'm like just wasting time and giving them my attention. So it is what it is. But speaking of elections, actually the same thing happened in Belgium, but we have, let's say, our equivalent of the AfD, which is Vlaams Belang, which is Flemish own interest, let's call it. Yes, it's true that people there, previously they were extremely right-wing. they started to evolve. There are certainly some people there that you can definitely categorize as extremely right-wing, but then again, you can categorize a lot of people in a lot of parties that do not fit in that certain party. But in Belgium, even though they became quite popular, there is like this unspoken agreement where you cannot form a government with them. It's called the cordon sanitaire. Even if they're huge, the other parties have an agreement. No, everything but that, which is quite strange because it's like you delete millions of votes. I don't know if it's millions of votes, but probably 1 million or something. And like, no, these people, we don't care about them because that party used to be extreme right, might have some extreme right ideas right now, might have some good ideas as well, but we rather stick with the usual stuff and the extreme left because those were the guys that were in power before. We're still in power because we have no government. Great.
Got it. So then I'll go the other way now. Now, Neil, so how would you describe the media landscape holistically in Belgium, like as a totality? So I'll give you sort of how it looks in the United States, and you tell me if it's similar. I'm going to guess it's not, but I'm curious to hear your take. In the U.S., there's been a very clear shift away from mainstream media, starting in about 2010s, and it sort of accelerated after 2016, and now it's obvious as day that media is ruled by independent people, and places like X, YouTube, and places like MSNBC, CNN, NBC, go down the list, Fox, to a certain extent, they've lost a lot of their influence. Go ahead, Hans.
Well, I was just going to clarify. And when you say ruled by, like, the actual percentage of Americans whose public or perception or their opinion is formed by independent media is definitely a much larger percentage than people who still form their opinions based on these legacy media institutions.
Correct. And podcasts have also had have been a huge variable for that dynamic. Podcasts like this one, where people can ingest long form information and make a sort of decision. The US has seen a shift away from that. And Trump's election is one of the biggest signals to this, that, hey, like, Trump getting elected is the result of a freer media landscape, right? How would you describe the situation in Belgium? And then after that, same question for Jan.
Yeah, so it's funny because I had this conversation last year and I was like thinking, in the US, like you said, you have like the CNNs, MSNBC and all of that, Fox, but at least you have choices to left, right, center, right, whatever you want to call it. Then you have multiple talk shows as well. I was like, in Belgium and maybe in other countries as well, I don't really think you have that much choice, right? The whole spectrum, at least that's from what I'm seeing. I think you have the same view and all programming is basically that. I don't think there is a right wing or a Fox equivalent, let's say, on my TV. I don't think so. Then when we speak about podcasting, which again goes back to the fact that the US is just so far ahead. And when you look at podcasting, Joe Rogan, Lex, the Nelk Boys and all of that, quite powerful audience. That's why Donald Trump went to those folks. I think a lot of their viewers are also Europeans. That's my view. I mean, I'm European and I'm their audience as well. I don't know if we have the equivalent of that in Europe. Like these young, big figures like Nell Boyce and whatnot. I don't think we have that, or a Joe Rogan. Obviously, I don't think there is a second Joe Rogan, but I don't think we have that yet. And for everything to change, I think we need more and more of those personalities, more of those folks that can create their own platform independently, whether it's podcast, whether it's independent media, whatnot, having some presence online, but some good presence, because we've seen some presence from maybe less popular folks. And yeah, go against the like mainstream media. Because again, in my view, if I turn on the TV, I think it's all the same thing. It's center, left. I don't think I have a Fox.
Quick follow-up question there. In a hypothetical world, because, the Tate brothers are from Europe. They did kind of grow a large following. They do have voices, but they're also, have a very sordid past. Do you think that if there was a someone who was like a Joe Rogan or a Jocko Willink or someone like that, who actually was relatively, had a relatively clean past, that they could succeed in growing in Europe domestically? Or would they be subjected to the same type of lawfare and political persecution that the Tate brothers, do you think that the Tate brothers get so much negative attention from law enforcement for legitimate reasons, or just because, like you said, there's an unwillingness to accept anyone coming to have a voice from the right side of the political spectrum?
I mean, I don't think that the Tate brothers, who are such a good example, let's say, for the youth, they're huge on social media.
I would agree.
Some reason or another. There are some attractive aspects to it, of course, right? Women and cars and money and this and that, which again, I don't think is the role model we want to create and the platform. But the thing is that once you become a little bit successful in Europe, I think most of the creators just go away. They either go to Dubai or they go to the United States, for example. Because again, the opportunities are just much, much bigger, probably getting taxed way less as well, because again, it's a difference.
There's no economic forcing function to keep those people in that region.
No, I like I messaged you, like this century, what new $100 billion company came out of Europe? None. They're all the old companies, which is a shame, because again, we have quite a rich culture in Europe, quite intelligent as well. But for some reason, I also think that Europe as a whole, European Union, needs to change. I remember the day I had to switch my Belgian francs to get euros. I felt robbed. I gave 2,000 francs, like a nice big bill, 2,000. I got 50 back. I'm like, where did the rest go? And I mean, it's funny, but it's not, because everything went up. I went from 2,000 to 50. It's crazy. There's a lot of things that need to change. The whole structure there just doesn't make much sense. There are unelected bureaucrats that control everything that you can and can do, like all the AI regulations, the fact that all of the big tech companies from America get, fines each and every year, because they need to get money from somewhere, right? So let's find American companies, because why not? I don't think they are yet to find a Chinese one. I don't think so, which is strange. But let's not get into that.
The Chinese companies are clearly morally superior to the American companies. So
obviously,
there's no reason to find them.
Communism's so much better than capitalism. Come on, Hans, it's the best. Jan, same question to you, media landscape, and I think this might be a good segue after that for the economic stuff, because it seems like we're starting to hit into political stuff. So, media landscape in Germany, is it reflecting the U.S. landscape, or is it much more just, very few options, much more controlled? How are you viewing it?
Now I have it. Okay, sorry.
There you go.
The landscape is different, I would say, especially when I was growing up, I would say 10 years ago, it was very different. It was over the last, 16 years or whatever, the media landscape changed in Germany also pretty much. You have to imagine this. We have public television, which is a big one. It's independent. It should be. It's the fourth power in the state, kind of. We have the legislative, the executive, and the judicative. And the media landscape, the public television should be the fourth one, which is a neutral-based information source that neutrality is very important there. So Germany did for a long time actually a good job doing this, but you saw more and more that the established parties had more and more seats in the boards of those media landscapes as well. So of course, every state that wants to, or every entity kind of that seeks out power, wants to control media as fast as possible, because we saw that in the Second World War with the radio, those Goebbels, for example, he really did use that to his advantage to control the whole the whole German people kind of to get into their ears, and they used and consumed this media like crazy. So this was the way to kind of get them in line. And I don't want to compare that. That's definitely not the case this way. But of course, having influence in media is an important topic. And the way they do, or it is in Germany, it's very subtle. It's not like very openly. I feel like in the US, it's way more obvious kind of when people try to influence media. It's almost embedded. Also, the conspiracy theories that are roaming around are way more in the US prevalent. Kind of,
we have Germany, the best ones.
Yeah, you have really the best ones because you have a very well-rounded spectrum of people from different kind of regions and areas, and also
we're the best education. At everything, Jan. Don't forget.
Yeah, exactly. You have the dumbest and the best people around here. No, but it's interesting to see that the media is different, and a huge factor that was important is. And this is a development that happened because of the Second World War and the Third Reich that was in Germany with Hitler and stuff, was that the way media present itself is very neutral, especially the government media, what do you say, the state, no, not state
public.
Media, I mean public, yeah, public media. They present information very cold, neutral, and without hype. Because the speeches and everything was on, like, it was just hype. It was just that before. And that influenced people so much that the Germans really were affected, like really they responded to this very much. So that's why they turned way the opposite, very neutral talking points. So there was a time kind of where this was better, but then it kind of skewed around because people that, it's the same like in the US, people that work in media are actually more left-leaning most of the time because they are creatives most of the time and are in the field. That's natural. But then they take over the topics. Then they take over the things that should be reported. And suddenly it skews itself. And I think this even accelerated. So the left-leaning agenda kind of spilled over into the media as well here. And that's global. And of course, we have pushback by the public. That's why those parties that are very right-wing or even, like super, super right-wing are now more popular because they're the exact opposite of that. So, there was an imbalance and now it's balancing itself kind of out. But am I a fan of that? Probably not. I don't trust, for example, the AfD too much because I know the party members and some of them are really like crazy people. Let's just say it like this.
Yeah. Okay. And so my question was like, this is just an interesting observation. So there's a stereotype about the German culture that is very rigid, very like direct, very like just like here's the thing. Is that a direct result of trying to correct for the World War II era boisterous? Like, do you think it comes out of that? Like, do you think the culture has been so directly impacted by it that it's really permeated through how Germans behave, like as people? Like they're trying their hardest not to reflect, not to remind themselves of that time period. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I would say so. You have to imagine this: the Nazis were so goddamn good in branding and marketing. They did such a great job in like branding themselves. Hugo Boss, for example, like Boss made their suits, for example, famously, and it was so effective. I have a book about that. I've studied this also at my university. It's NSCI. It's called Corporate Identity of the National Socialists in Germany, and it's really a stretch. The lengths they went into, they were like professionals in that sense. That's why it's still so effective. So the symbols are effective. The way to talk is effective. The way everything around that was so strong. That's why it turned around kind of to get more into a neutral tone, to get away from that. And also the education was really focused on that over years to like after the the Second World War to dismantle this, because this was in society engraved. It's difficult to pull that out because it was an atrocity. It was crazy what happened there, and that's why until this day, that's why people are so sensitive about something like this when Elon does a movement like this on stage, because this is forbidden. You cannot do that on the street. If you do that on the street, you're going to get arrested. That's how it is. You cannot do this. We don't have free speech in that sense. And for those reasons, because it is so effective, I think that's a good thing to have this penalize some of those Nazi symbols and Nazi salutes and stuff like this, because they are very effective, kind of. That's just my opinion there. I'm not sure if that works so great, but overall, I think because it was hard to denazify Germany. It was difficult to do that, and that's why it's still, people are very sensitive to that.
It's
that's
still
why
raw.
no Nazi jokes. It's not funny for Germans at all. I know the whole world loves them, kind of, or does them, but Germans don't respond very well to them. Yeah.
If you go on the Model Y reviews from the last couple of days, there's been some pretty intense jokes in the comments section. Sorry for laughing, but
no. But I get it. It's not your history, kind of, for people that are not from the country, because
I'm not directly connected to it. Yeah,
exactly. Because maybe as a backstory, sorry that I extend so much about this, but I think that's important to know why Germany is so sensitive about that, or maybe some even countries in Europe. For example, my personal history, just so you know, my grandfather was in the concentration camp, actually, and he, with his family and our family, they printed flyers against the regime, for example, and were very active in also helping people that were fleeing. And it was gladly just in the last kind of days of the regime, or last months, that he was in the concentration camp. But then they got freed by the Allies, by the Americans in that case. And he went to the US and he went over there. He just left Germany then because it was too much. And but just the backstory. That's why I'm also I know my way around that topic. Yeah.
So one of the dynamics that is, I mean, it's very understandable, but it's also somewhat illogical if you think about things rationally. That, and I'm speaking as a libertarian who really dislikes authoritarian, either the right-wing version or the left-wing version, that there's such an emphasis on the right-wing form of authoritarianism in Europe, and an absolute blindness to the pure evil that also exists in left-wing authoritarianism. Like, there were far more Russians who were murdered in the same period of time by Stalin than there were people who were massacred in the Holocaust in Germany. And so it just seems, I guess, to me from an outside perspective, that there is not an equal right, that, you know, it's fine if we want to narrow the Overton window to exclude this extreme ideology on the right wing end of the spectrum, but only if we're going to balance that with also doing that with the extremely corrosive and destructive ideology on the left side of the political spectrum as well. And that's one of the things that I think makes this such a difficult issue in Europe, is that because only one half of that spectrum conversation, that Overton window, is shut down, then it leaves you open to these socialist ideas, which are also very, very, or, communist ideas that are very, very destructive as well. So I don't know, as Europeans, how do you think that political conversation gets shifted? Is it possible to stigmatize left-wing authoritarianism in the same way, or is this kind of a never-ending distortion that we won't be able to escape from?
Who wants to take that heavy question first? Neil, go for it.
No, it ties back to what I said before. With if I open the TV, I only get left media, which is why you get that narrative, right? Which you far right, extremely bad, but we're not talking about the fact that communism and all of that massacred more people throughout history than anything else, right? Never talk about that. We don't talk about the fact that left-leaning politicians and all of that have been the leaders in Europe for God knows how long in many of the countries. Yet things have not improved. Things got more expensive, more violence and all of that. We cannot talk about that. But if there is something with a small hint of super right-wing or a little bit right-wing, then it's suddenly a disaster, which again is quite strange. But on the other side, if you see who controls what gets said on TV, you start to understand why. Then on social media, of course, you can have other types of conversations, especially now with X and, well, a new meta, let's say. But I'll give you an example, something I saw today. It's an old article that I found out today. It's come from the Netherlands, and it said that they don't even know who's the prime minister in Belgium, but they know which are the swing states in the United States. It just to show that a lot of the younger folks, let's say, are way less interested in what's going on in Europe, maybe in their country or a neighbor country, but know exactly what's going on in the United States, which goes back to what I said before, because huge podcasters, huge people on social media, guess what? They are in the United States. Everything is around that conversation. Every, let's say, big drama on the internet, pop culture, sports, you name it, it comes from United States social media figures, politicians, whatnot. And in Europe, I have a feeling that the only thing that we get is when Elon and Thierry, whatever his name is, are challenging themselves on X. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a couple of famous folks in Europe to build the platform, build their own company, and start making a change. There are a couple of folks on X, that blonde lady from the Netherlands that starts to speak up a little bit. Maybe in the UK, we're going to see some movements. Remains to be seen. What's happening there is also quite crazy. But yeah, we'll see.
And what do you think?
So first of all, I'm a little hesitant with labeling the influence of the left kind of inside, for example, in the public or in the media landscape, because it's, for example, in Germany we have a multi-party system. In Europe as well. You know that we don't have two parties; we have multiple ones. With the Green Party, we have the kind of the economic parties that are more for the rich people, kind of. Then we have also the socialist parties, which are not communist parties. You have to differentiate there very much, because in Germany we have a very strong arm there as well. That is, it's more about that came from the Industrial Revolution, kind of, that people have actually rights as well, the workers especially, and that they get a fair share, kind of, and there's also where our great health and security system kind of comes from, the safety net, which is totally expensive, and I'm not sure if that's the best approach, but that's a different topic. But overall, I think it's important to be careful with labeling, because I don't know is it everything left-leaning? I'm not sure. In Germany, for example, we had Ursula von der Leyen, for example. She's from the Conservative Party in Germany, and she's far from anywhere near left. So it's very different. But what they did to gain popularity is to take some bits and pieces out of the left, from the left parties, or the more is it liberal? I'm not sure. It's like, for me, it's
Liberal is like left, like moderate. You're talking about like the center people, or like the
no.
or?
I mean liberal people,
Progressive,
liberal,
maybe?
progressive and liberal ideas. They took them, and they are actually very conservative, and they lean more to the left or side. Kind of did some policies that were very left because they wanted to get the left voters as well. And in this type of chameleon shape and shifting, they lost their stand in the society because many people in Germany especially are very conservative voters. So they're like, hey, where's my party? They just approved gay marriage. What's happening here? I'm not for that. What? And then they started to seek out for alternatives. And then we have the alternative for Germany, which is more from the right spectrum, actually. But then the regular center to conservative people just left there and went there. And that's what kind of happened there. That's the main reason. And now every party in Germany goes crazy about this, that, oh no, they gain traction. Why? Yeah, because the decision you did not adhere to the people. There were many people, many voices were not heard, and those people seek shelter there. And I don't agree with the party. I don't trust the AfD at all, but I'm a Democrat, and if I'm a Democrat, if they are working in the confines of the law, you cannot do anything against that. And you shouldn't, because that's a democracy. People vote then, and they can vote. They can do whatever they like with their voice. And democracy needs to do that. But no, everybody wants to forbid the party. That's why, because it's so difficult to get proof that they are not adhering to the law, but they are, and that it's a bitter taste for them. But that's how it is. Yeah, but it's interesting. It's a global, like, kind of, this thing is a Western theme that's everywhere. And the US, it's spilled over. And I also think, if you zoom out, always think about that. Who has benefits from destabilizing Europe, for example? China loves if Europe is not such a strong economic power. And also now kind of if the US is more now looking for themselves, then it's also good to destabilize Europe in that sense as well, because, hey, then we can have better deals, or, because some things are just crazy. I mean, that's why Donald Trump is so, with writing all these, signing those executive orders, and that's really bad for Europe. It's really bad because the US doesn't pay now for security anymore. And what is that? Now we have to pay it. And suddenly I see posters of the military, join the military, guys, and stuff like this. Yeah. So they are, because they expand now. Yeah.
Neil, I say you saw you came off mute. Did you want to add something?
You've seen that in France, for example. The right is also rising. We've seen that in Austria. We've seen that in Belgium as well. And it's always a problem, right? Because, like you said, it's probably the folks that were maybe in the center, that were Democrats, but suddenly their previous, let's say, party, like in the US, for example, Elon Musk is always saying the same thing. He didn't move, the party moved way to the left. And so he now gets into the category of the right party. And I don't know how much more time the majority of folks need to get to understand that there is a problem. Clearly, a lot of folks are now tired of all the issues that's happening in Europe. And that's why they're voting the way that they are voting. Sometimes you're like, okay, lesser of two evils, I guess, unless you don't want to vote. That's also an option. But this is what we're seeing right now in Europe. Plus, European Union, don't forget, we all have to pay. One country that's financially not great, like we've seen with Greece and some others, then the others have to pay. So there's always a huge financial hole somewhere. In Belgium, for example, I have it here, the debt compared to GDP is at 104% or so and rising. It's not great, not great at all. Like Jan said, we have great healthcare systems and all of that, but it's not cheap. It comes at a huge price. And if you, I mean, I think we've seen that with some Nordic countries, when you remove the incentives of, oh, come to our country, you'll get all of these things for free, suddenly you have less of an influx of people coming in and you having to pay billions of euros to the folks that don't work. But then it costs the folks that do work way more. Like the taxes are super, super high. I think in Germany as well, right? Taxes are...
Oh, no, we have
high.
totally low taxes. It's so great.
So yeah, I mean, food is good, healthcare is great, but at the end of the day, you are paying quite a lot for that, money-wise, security-wise as well, and economic power is basically disappearing quite quickly, especially from Germany. Germany is a superpower, especially when it comes to cars. And I think the Chinese are definitely starting to destroy that power. But Jan probably can tell us way more about that.
Yeah. I think what you've mentioned here is also interesting, that that we pay a lot of taxes and stuff, that the system is kind of broken. It's obvious like that. One thing to note is very important. Why European Union anyway? Why do we do that? Why is that important? Because from one day to another, overnight kind of, Europe became the second largest economic power in the world because of that. So it makes sense to trade together, to get together and then be as one entity and standardize the laws around all the regions, that we can trade better. But we've seen over the years as well that every individual country kind of pulled back out of this idea in some cases, and trade to France, for example, from Germany is super difficult. If you have products, you have to have somebody, by law, you have to have somebody there in the country to actually, a legal person to, and this is just expensive in the end. And they raise taxes everywhere. That's just insane, because the system is difficult to maintain, because we have such an imbalance between the southern states kind of and the northern states. And the northern states are more prosperous than the southern states, for example, because we don't kind of generate stuff. That's the problem. Like if you compare it, you've had the whole social media and a great mobile phone thing. Nokia was a European company. They screwed up big time. So all the value, kind of all the money flows out of Europe. That's also one thing. We just use the things from the US most of the time. Of course, Germany is a superpower in that sense. That's right. There are a lot of hidden champions that make very specialized machinery, like Roman automation that was bought up by Tesla, for example, that They have this bottle sorting system, for example, and they use that for the battery production. And they were in talks with Mercedes, and they generate a lot of value here. But that's not enough to kind of shoulder this, because the big money was made by the social media companies, for example, and those things. And in the US, it's a totally different system. The government there, smartly enough, says, hey, you know what? How about you just develop your market first before we step in and tax you? And that's a good idea, because then the market can develop. And obviously Amazon oversteps a lot, and Facebook Meta oversteps a lot with their double Irish strategy, that they have a entity in Ireland. Oh no, we just pay. We have to pay them like copyright, that we can use their technology. The Irish are so innovative. It's so crazy. So yeah, I mean, there are different things to consider here, but overall, it's. I lost my train of thought. What?
No, you're good. No, because what you're going through is kind of interesting to me, because the overarching theme that I hear from Europeans and that I observe from here is that Europe seems like their biggest issue, from my perspective, is that they have absolutely no incentives. If anything, they have disincentives for creation. Just to create businesses, create value, harness the talent, keep the talent, reward the talent with money for their efforts. It seems like it's like Europe is in this partnership that nobody really wants to be in, that everybody has to keep feeding, and they're trying to figure out ways on how to disassociate themselves from that partnership while having to stay in the partnership. And then the partnership is ruled by people who aren't even elected. And they get to kind of make the rules for that entire party that's already dysfunctional. And then each individual country has one hand tied behind their back, And through the globalization of internet and technology, the people that actually want to make a difference are like, why the fuck should I stay here? I'm going to go to the place that's going to let me build. And you have a talent drain away from Europe to places like United States and UAE and probably Argentina now, right? Do you think that's a fair characterization of Europe from my perspective? Like, did I describe the relationship properly?
Pusillanimous.
Pusillanimous. That was a new word I learned yesterday. Yeah, for those that don't know what that means, it's basically the unwillingness to make the brave decision. Is like timidness. It's like being really timid, like not like being afraid of making the right
courage,
decision. Lack of courage.
And that's I think in Europe it's like you have something for so long, you want to protect. You do not maybe want to see the truth that maybe things are changing, things have to change. It has not been always rosy, but you are so afraid of breaking things up. Like in the US, it's like, oh, you start something, you fail. Okay, fine. Let's try it again. In Europe, there is less of a risk taking. Let's say, I would say, it's like, if I try something, I have to make sure that it will work, and if not, then not. Especially from government standpoint, I mean, I see it in my own country. There is, I don't know why they're afraid to try new things, like break stuff here and there, and then maybe something good will come out of it. And it goes down to the population a lot. Again, if you want to build something, most of them will just go away. They will go to the US, to Dubai, maybe to Ireland as well. But yeah, there is a lack of, I would say courage is the word maybe.
Jan, would you agree, or any additional context?
Yeah, I would say that it has something to do with culture generally. The European states are very different to each other. So the French are way different than the Germans. The Germans are different than the Polish. The Polish are different than the Spanish, and so on and so on. It's a patchwork of different things. And the difference to the US here is the people that fled Europe went to the US, that fled from tyranny went to the US there. And there was the land of opportunity, kind of. Obviously, there were already people living there. That's a different story. The US has a very dark history with that. But in the end, the pioneering spirit that the US has, the low context communication that you have. If I write with Farsad, I want to write like a German, and he writes one small sentence, and that's it. Because low context, fast, just simple stuff, fast, and get cut to the chase. And our sentences are miles long, and yours are like this short. It's.
I'm not ignoring you, I promise.
Yeah, I know. And this is culturally so different. So you have a different kind of pioneering spirit. The people that went there, they needed to communicate fast, easy, and simple. It needed to be simplified, and this made things faster. Your pacing is a little bit faster in that sense. And now we have Europe, where we are we don't have landmass anymore. We don't, like, France has land masses still, but Germany was just a huge forest in the past, and then everything is already taken. There's no plot of land kind of to get. That's why everything is expensive. Europe is on the grounds of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wars. Like, you know what I mean? And in the US, it's a little bit different. Surely you have your issues there as well, and there were wars as well, but not to that extent that was in Europe. It's so different here, and the system was changing all the time. We had just war in Europe all the time. That's everybody wants to get back to the Roman Empire, and now it's kind of the same. It's just different. It's always the same thing. Always at the borders of the old Roman Empire. It's always there's the war zone kind of, and to this day. But it's stabilized more and more. But still, that's the thing. And I think that's the difference. The pioneering spirit there, to fail is normal because, hey, you had to build up this country. It's different than you started new kind of, and fled from that. So you said, no, we don't want that. We don't want exactly this kind of rules. We want to be ourselves. We want to be free, kind of, and that's where it came from. And also, of course, the French Revolution was very important for you as well, because it kind of was important, but. It's just culturally different, I think, and that's why we just seek for security and shelter kind of all the time. Like, we're always like securing, because we're war traumatized all the
Risk taking is not part of the DNA of the region.
No, it's survival more, and then it's like, okay, no, secure that, secure this.
It's a mindset
more
of
rules
scarcity.
there, more rules, because we don't want to have war again. Kind of, it's kind of my opinion that the US is different there.
That's very insightful.
One extra dimension that I'm curious if this resonates with you, it seems like a sense of responsibility, not only for like your fellow countrymen in whichever European nation that you live in, but even like an extra sense of responsibility to Europe as a whole has been used as one of those securing mechanisms. Where, like, how do we keep from going to wars? Where, well, we're going to like strengthen the connections of all of these countries so that they have shared interests, but with those shared interests come shared responsibilities. And so you are responsible for, Greece when they have an economic meltdown. That, like, I understand why that would be a very useful tool in that situation, but I was just realizing that extra sense of responsibility really lowers your risk. Like, it's hard for a father with 3 kids and a wife to feed to go out and be an entrepreneur, where they may have to go through a season of making little to no money because they have responsibility. Like, the bar for risk taking you really need to know that whatever you're going to do is going to work in order for you to be willing to take those risks, because you have a high level of responsibility. And so, I was just curious if that resonates, like if that high level of social responsibility that is kind of table stakes for every European is part of what also, in addition to the history of war, something that helps to reinforce that culture of non-risk taking.
So first off, one thing that you said with, for example, Greece, why Europe is responsible, that's where I differ a little bit from Neil's opinion there, that obviously, the having one currency kind of was negative for the states that were rich, kind of, Germany, also Belgium as well, and it was great for us to not to be in the euro, with the euro, but you have to think it like this. For example, if Greece is just left alone, okay, who cares about Greece? Let's just, somebody will take it, because the Turkish, for example, had the Ottoman Empire. They fought over Europe all the time. That's what I mean. There will be an entity that gets control of Greece. And then there will be an entity like Russia to get control of Ukraine, for example. That's the same. If the border, like if this union is not secured in that way, that we trade and we have a currency as well and come together kind of, then somebody else from the outside will just scoop up here and there and this, and then suddenly it's closer and closer to the center. Yeah, that's just one special point about Europe that's different. China is so big, kind of, they have their everything is sorted out, kind of. They don't have border disputes unless with India there. But I mean, those are also bad disputes, don't get me wrong. But the core country kind of is safe, kind of. You know what I mean? It's different. The Europe really is like a cake that everybody wants to get a piece of, kind of. Oh, how about we take this and that? And so that's the reasoning, I think, to that. And also the NATO is that's why it's so important, and the UN as well, like kind of to have this different balance, because but people argue with that too. I don't think that Putin wants to take over Europe. I think they just want to secure their borders from the past again. Yeah, and that's also Ukraine because the UdSSR was collapsed, and then he wants to get back to the ways it was, the borders from that time, because they lost a lot of stuff, and they don't like the Ukraine was, the Crimea was just given away, kind of, and that's why they wanted to get it back. The Crimea, I mean, sorry, that's German. Yeah, like Crimea was, Krim is the German word. That's what.
Yeah.
Crimea is not German. I don't want to say that.
Yeah. Did you have anything to add there, Neil?
No, I agree. I agree with what he said. I also think that, and that's why you've seen in the US now the America First movement, right? Fine, we are willing to pay, right? We are willing to contribute. But at the same time, you should be putting your own country first. And I think a couple of countries in Europe have put their citizens a bit at the second spot because it is more sexy to help outsiders and struggling nations and stuff like that. And I mean, in the meantime, what you get higher pricing, purchasing power goes down. It hurts your core citizens. So yeah, I agree with both sides here. But I do think that as a country, as leaders of countries, your main thing is to make sure that the people from your countries are well. It's not to say you have to disregard all the rest, right? No, but your country comes first, which is probably why we're seeing a rise of populism, let's say, around Europe and the United States. But yeah, Europe as a whole, as a continent, is a very interesting thing to study for sure.
It's just the cultures are so different. You know, I think that's, when I think about the United States, we've, my wife and I have had the fortune of being able to drive around and do road trips. We've been able to see a lot of different states on the ground, and there's a vast difference. There's a vast difference. A lot of the states have their own, they're kind of like, there's sub-regions. There's probably like, I don't know, probably like 10 to 15 different sub-regions in the United States where, kind of New England is the same vibe. You have sort of the Mid-Atlantic, it's kind of the same vibe. You have the South, that's kind of the same vibe. You have Florida, it's its own crazy thing. You got Texas, it's its own crazy thing. You got the Midwest, you have the Pacific Northwest, you kind of got the West and stuff. So there's a lot of different pockets of cultures in the and then
even the Rockies is kind of its own. It's not, the Rockies are different than the Pacific, especially the Pacific Northwest, but then also very distinct from the Midwest. Yeah, and
Appalachia.
Yes, Appalachia is definitely its own thing.
Yeah, so. Ohio. That's a joke. Who cares about Ohio? Fuck you, Buckeyes, in your national championship. Go fuck yourselves. Anyway, but what I wanted to say is that, at least when you go around, in the end, they're Americans.
Yes.
Right? People have state pride. Texans, I think, are kind of a unique breed in a way, because I think Texans are kind of Texans first and Americans second. But if shit goes down, like, that American flag is going to fly, and they're not going to be afraid to really, really support America for what it is. A lot of pride in America, especially since Trump got elected. I've been feeling a lot of pride for America, and maybe that's because of my biases and my circles and who I associate with. But it does the air feels different in this country. Like, there's a return to exceptionalism, and America needs to be the leader, and it has to be strong, and it has to get it in front and lead the country, right? Whereas in Europe, it's like, by default, when Spain and Germany, how are they going to be part of the same place? They're so different. And then you throw Italy and Greece in there, and you throw French. Poland. Ugh. Oh, and the French, the Brits already left. You know what I'm saying? Like you're trying to make friends get along that I don't feel like they don't really want to. I don't know if the cultures are compatible. It's almost like you have a better chance of making Australia and the United States one thing than France and Germany, or France and England, or France and Spain. It feels harder, and they're right next to each other. And they're literally right next to each other, right? So, I don't know. And I think, and so when I think about this, is at the root, I feel like it's going to be very hard unless something happens Like this is sort of like, I want to tie this to the Trump presidency and the economy stuff. Actually, before I say that, we're an hour in. Are you guys comfortable with going maybe like half hour more? Are you guys good with that? Okay. It seems like for Europe to actually be a successful region, a successful continent, you need economic incentives. In the end, what is the thing that actually gets people to want to do the thing is when they feel like when they do the thing, they are able to then do what they want to do. And in this day and age, the way to do that is by giving those people money. They get the money and then they can do the thing they want to do with their time. Money is the trade. It's like the thing we use to trade time for money, right? And if you don't have a lot of incentives for people to want to be part of a big thing like Europe that could have so much strength and so many things that could go for it, right? But if you don't create an environment for people to reap the rewards of that, what is the incentive? What is the incentive? Especially when you get to the ground level truth of like the people that are part of that region, some of the highest taxes, the lowest upward mobility, when you within the context of like Western nations, especially the United States, right? You have the same sort of underlying thing of democracy and giving power to the people, but like how much are you allowing the people to actually have power? It doesn't seem like there is that much, right? So I'm curious if that's even a thing that can propagate through their region. Like, does the Trump presidency, maybe is that a forcing function for the rest of the European countries to say, okay, the United States kind of figured out how to return more power to the individual in a way. I mean, we'll see if the execution of it actually turns out to be true in the next 4 years, but that's definitely what the vibe feels like. Could that also happen to Europe? I don't know. Hans, go for it, and then we'll give it to our European friends.
Well, I would say one of the things that Neil brought up earlier is a very interesting data point that in the age of social media, if children in Europe today who are 20 years old or younger are primarily deriving their culture from their digital lives, that these more American-centered values and multiculturalism might be able to really take hold in Europe in a way that, like, if a person derives more than 50% or 60% or 70% of their culture from the internet, then from the very real, like, physical, harsh reality of the past of Europe, then I don't know, like, that is a major cultural force that will have different impacts in the future, and it'll drive different outcomes in the future than we've seen before. So I'd say that that's one of the aspects. The other aspect is that it is the old world. It's not the new world. And we've never seen a free market arise in the old world and manage to flourish and survive and really spread out. Like the European Union, I think the intention was to create this free market for all of Europe. And to y'all's point, that hasn't necessarily worked out in practice as well as it was intended. And surprise, surprise, when you try to regulate something into existence, you oftentimes end up doing the exact opposite of what you were trying to do. There's a great story that Mark Andreessen has been telling recently about, I can't remember which president it was. It was LBJ or maybe it was even Nixon, who wanted to pursue a nuclear energy future for the United States, and he wanted, complete, project independence, that we wanted to create all energy in the United States from nuclear. And as part of doing that, he created the EPA and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and those two agencies ended up squashing all nuclear development in the United States. There was, as soon as he instituted those agencies, we didn't build basically any more nuclear power plants. And so anyways, the EU kind of seems like it's potentially having that same type of unintended, exactly opposite impact. And the thing that has really created the most prolific wars in Europe in recent history have been economic hardships. That the economic hardships coming out of World War I are the reason that World War II even took place at all. And so if we don't figure out how to rejuvenate the economies, then I think we are, at greater risk. But it's hard to want to let people have the freedom that's necessary to have the free market that's necessary to fix the economy when you are so worried that giving people freedom will then allow the types of cultural tensions to reignite that have, gone back for literally thousands and thousands of years.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good observation there, or good point. You have to think about this. That's why this whole topic is so complex. That's why we can say, Elon Musk to the salute, and now Europe's are furious. Or Germans especially. But that's it. That's the complex thing here. The systems are different. We have such a different history, and it's so complex. I mean, if you compare the US size to Europe, you have around 340 million people in the US. We have 700 million. And try to control double the size of the US now, and try to unify double the size of the US. You can't even
and
unify
we have more
300
land
million.
for our half the people.
And we can't even unify 80 million here in Germany. So nobody. It's difficult. It's difficult to do because every country has different economic incentives and economic things they want to push. For example, Germany is seen as the plain enemy in export of meat, especially because we're such a big meat producer, because we have the German people that pay so much taxes that they can incentivize our meat production to the extent, or our agriculture sector, to that extent that we export eggs to China. Okay? Let that sink in. We export eggs and stuff like this and goods to China big time, because we're a very huge exporter of goods. And for example, different states that also produce meats or or agriculture products say, what the hell? We don't have this kind of tax system that you have. Guys, this is unfair. Yeah, that's difficult. And those kinds of things, there are so many tensions in between the countries. Or that, for example, France now says, okay, how about we tax, people have to have an entity here in France. That's good, because then we can have more money. And then they tax again. And suddenly we go, that's why looking for our own country here means a very lonely, small, little country in the end. Because then our borders shrink to the size of Germany, and then to Belgium, and then to that's the hardship here. That's the difficult thing here. And if we don't, if Greece isn't included, then Turkey has influence over that. That's also fine. There were also discussions that Turkey joins the European Union. It didn't work out because they don't have a really democracy. It's difficult. They also have their own kind of thing. They're more on the verge of the Arabian countries. It's culturally different. It's difficult to unify this, and this conflict goes on for years. And Erdogan, the leader there, sent also refugees through the country to Europe as a strategy of destabilizing Europe. For example, we have those kinds of things, and this is also. There are so many factors. You won't believe how complex this issue is. That's why I'm not looking for left, right. No, it's about it's real. Like, it's a puzzle of more than that. It's way more complex. Yeah,
I love the social sensitivity that you're using, Jan, to avoid saying the fact that the European Union doesn't want to have Muslim dictators as part of the union.
No, I'm more of struggling with words. How it's actually called. I'm seeking out for a word. That's why I'm just simplifying.
The translating.
I'm doing it more the vanilla way of saying it, because my words don't get into my mouth.
Neutral. The public news way. There you go.
The Switzerland way. Yeah, the Switzerland way. No, but he's right. I mean, in Belgium, we're like 11, 12 million folks. And it's like the northern part of Belgium is Flemish. The southern part is French speaking. And then we even have a German part, like a super tiny. Even in a small country like us, there is a reason why it takes us 500 days to get a government. Because even inside that small country, we can't even agree on certain things. It's quite crazy. And it's funny, we talk about security, right? We're always trying to make sure that everything is secure. We do this, we do that. But we had no issues for the past 10 plus years importing people from Turkey and whatnot, or letting them come inside the countries. I mean, in 2016, our airport in Brussels blew up from terrorists inside the country that were there, that the police cannot go into because it's already too dangerous. Quite strange, but it's a shame, because all the countries in Europe, they are amazing folks there for sure, amazing companies, amazing people, and
incredible
the potential
cultures.
is there. Yeah, I mean, the potential is there. If you look at the architecture, if you look at what has happened before, scientific stuff, cultural stuff, all of that, how are we letting that disappear? That's my thing. Like for years and years, I'm thinking, and I don't see pink a lot, and that's maybe the issue, but I'm asking myself the time and time again, like, how are we letting this thing get destroyed without a war? Because if it's a world war, then okay. I mean, we've seen what happened before, fine. But now it's like, we see it, and we are, I don't know, acting, not acting, reacting. It's I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. That's the thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think from like an outsider's perspective, I think it speaks to the lack of leadership as one unit, and the buy-in culturally from that massive unit. That's what happened. Like, okay, so and I'm gonna use a terrible analogy. I'm gonna let Hans go first, but I'm sorry, this is gonna probably piss you off, but I'm gonna use it anyway. Go ahead, Hans.
Oh no, go for it. I have a question after that about for both of our European friends on something else.
And I want to hit AI too, because I think the AI, the regulation, Europe stuff. Okay, so Europe to me sounds like legacy media, and Europe sounds like legacy auto. You have a gigantic behemoth of parties layered upon bureaucracy with a leader that can't see the future. But because it doesn't exist, right? Because that one singular leader that's out there perhaps is not pushing the and I think that's why America works in that respect. It's because you have one person. It's not a dictatorship, but you have a person that's setting the vision for the group of people, and then we filter that person out depending on what the people want that leader to be. Europe by default can't have that person. You know, it has to figure out how to play nice with everybody.
Yeah,
we also have more states that are running experiments to surface what are the good ideas. So I think that is also a factor.
Yeah, that's a huge point. That's the cultural difference thing, kind of, because in leadership, for example, I've went through this for my master's thesis. The cultural differences between the US and Germany, by the way, for example, I'm using that example because there you see the decision making is so different, and we can compare VW with Tesla and stuff like this. But the Daimler Chrysler fusion didn't work out at all, because the Americans, when they decide something, they decide very fast, and then they try and now the data changed, kind of. Now we decide differently. And Germans discuss, meetings. And 90% of the way then they decide. And this decision is fixed because they don't want to start to discuss again. Because they have to see, is every stakeholder happy here? Okay. You know why? Because now back to Europe here. If we don't agree, we're going to pinch our eyes out. We're going to fight against each other. And then that's the problem. We had so many small wars. In Europe, we had a 30-year war. 30-year war. Okay? That's it. This is crazy. So that's the...
And Jan, just for context, tell people what percentage of the European population died during the 30 Years' War? Do you know?
No,
almost a third.
Yeah.
Almost 1 in 3 Europeans died
Yeah.
in the 30 Years' War.
Talk about hardships. Oh yeah, there you have it. And that's also the big problem, because now back to the conservative kind of viewpoint, or that we have such a swing to the right now, because we had a refugee crisis, and now people say, hey guys up there, people, leaders, we are not seen. Here are huge problems. Things are dismissed. I see it all around me. Problems are everywhere. Why doesn't anybody do something? Oh, let's just focus more on ourselves, on our countries. Now close up the borders. And now we go back to this. Europe falls now, and now we have small individual countries that look out for themselves and are unstable even more. That's the danger of that. So if you think that through, kind of, there needs to be a balance, and this shift will happen. It will swing back. The left-leaning way was very long. Now it swings back to the right-leaning way, because we have the refugee crisis and stuff like this. Because even the most left-leaning progressive people cannot deny the fact that this was a problem. Even me, I'm very open and stuff like this. I'm not at all like, I'm the last one to be dismissive of foreign people or anything. But it is problematic if it's unhinged, if it's not controlled. Also in the US, you have to control your borders. It's not possible to have that. And generally, it's important, of course, to get prosperity everywhere around the world, kind of to don't have those kind of issues, because then people don't want to move from their country if the country isn't destabilized. So, multifaceted problem here, but it's not as simple as, oh yeah, I'm just going to vote right or left. That's just the beginning. But in the end, is it a good strategy to look just for this own country in Europe? It's a tough question to answer because of the history we have. It's difficult. Yeah, sorry, Neil.
Go for it, Neil.
No, I have a question. Do you think Europe just has to go even more hardcore into the Europe idea? Say that Europe, all of the countries are like states in the United States, and then the whole of Europe is America, and you have one president that all of the countries voted for, one person that I think actually vote for.
That's the idea in the end of the European idea, kind of to get it more like the US. But I don't know if that's possible, because we've seen, for example, in the UK, also through social media, the Brexit thing was definitely manipulated from the outside. So there are some things that are happening. Again, we're the second largest economy. It makes sense to destabilize us if we are competing. So China or Russia wants to destabilize this. Also, maybe the US in some sense, some could want that.
But
whatever.
isn't that more of a thing that says you should figure out a model that closely resembles the States, where you do have unity through a democratically elected leader that sets the vision for the region?
The problem is, if people have economic hardships or have problems that are not heard, then having even a bigger behemoth, again, we're talking about 700 million people here that need to be unified. That's different. And we don't have the US history. That's also different. So we had more wars before that. So unifying Europe is way harder than unifying the US, kind of. And we have those rigid structures in place. And that's also something, yeah.
So it sounds like Europe is doomed for shit. Okay, so if you unify as one country, you're gonna end up pissing too many people off. You're gonna have a civil war. If you dissolve Europe, you're gonna every man for themselves. A bunch of countries don't have enough to actually
bigger
survive.
Powers will overtake. Yeah,
will overtake, and so they're screwed. Absolutely. And then the current thing is like, okay, you are semi-unified, but nothing gets done, and everybody's kind of sitting around like, okay, are we just gonna disappear into nothingness? Is that too harsh, or is that like fair?
No, yeah, it's fair. I would say it's fair. I think one thing that's
I want to hear Neil's too.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought, and then I'll throw it to Neil. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I think it's important to get rid of some regulations to don't overextend this way. I think it's good that Europe regulates some stuff, because we are not talking about
Your food is
US
amazing.
right now. Yeah,
Your food is amazing.
Yeah,
Our food's horrific.
not even that. Like things that you're allowed to put into your food is insane. The chemicals that you are allowed to use.
Red 40, yellow 5, let's go.
Yeah. But you have fucking Lucky Charms. So that's so that I love them. But just one example: the US, for example, has different problems. We don't have the homeless problem to the extent that you have. We don't have the medical problems that we like you have there, due to the fact for example, the how you're insured or whatever, or your safety. You don't have safety systems, but yeah, it's just different. And also, for example, regulations. There were many cases where companies poisoned the lake because they put chemicals instead of that. To that extent, that doesn't happen in Europe like this. Like, it's not possible. There are so many approvals that you have to do beforehand that stuff like this is secure. We have secure systems, but it's very bloaty and slow. So it's a balancing thing. So it has advantages because you can move faster, but also companies have a lot of power in the US.
Our surface area for mistakes here is definitely larger, and we do make them. So I'm curious, how do y'all...
Real quick, can I get Neil's thoughts on that, if
yes.
he has anything to add? Yeah.
No, I agree. There is a balance of things that we need to figure out, for sure, because clearly, I mean, again, I take the example of 2008. If you look at the economic growth and all of that, Europe barely moved, but it's true, we have to break certain things to see what will work eventually. It's true that you will experience some pain, but to go forward, you will need to break stuff. You need to endure some pain in the short run, but I think it will be worth it if we can prosper as like a huge continent in the future. How will that get done? Remains to be seen.
I think that's actually a good lead in to the question that I have. How do Europeans view Giorgia Meloni and what's going on in Italy? It seems like she's one of the few national leaders who's kind of willing to break ranks somewhat with the ideology of most of the rest of the political leadership class in Europe.
To be honest, I have not seen a lot of what's going on there, other than the few stories where she wanted to do something, but then like a government body or like a structure in the Italian system went over her head. To be honest, I don't know. So I don't want to say stupid things that I don't know. But the fact that she got elected is already something in the right direction. Then it's up to her and I guess her party to actually do things. I mean, you get elected, you probably promised some stuff. Now you have to get the job done, right? It's the same in the US. Doge, Trump, Elon, all of that. You promised a lot. You get 4 years to prove yourself.
Don't be afraid about saying stupid stuff, because that's the Hans and I's entire podcast. We just say stupid things 24/7.
Yeah, and you have free speech at least. No.
Hell yeah.
To that regard, I think that's an interesting point. All the conservative leaders that are elected now, and also the parties that are even right-wing that are elected now and more and gain traction, are coordinating themselves already now before they even are in power, which means that's why they want to ban those parties by law, because it's so dangerous. Because for them, that's from the perspective of the established parties I'm talking about.
It's dangerous for the old people who have been ruining things for so long.
Yeah, whatever. But no, the thing is, we have an established system, and when all the right-wing parties come into power more or less at the same time, they are already coordinated, which means they will have a alternative model to the European Union that they want to have on top of that. Kind of, they coordinate themselves differently, and they want to have I think, even not like really a structure shift to something else. But this is dangerous because there if then fascists are somewhere and in power, then media gets controlled, and this can go south very fast. I think that's why the established parties are so crazily against these parties, like the amount that they are. Like they really fear for this system to establish, kind of.
Any sort of change could lead to fascism. It's like if there's big change, it could end up being the extreme version of the change. There's no positive change; it's negative change by default, right? That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like could be one of the leading things. Okay, so let me ask you this last topic before we close up shop here. The biggest development that's happening right now is something that we cover very closely. I know all four of us are very interested in, is the insanely rapid development of artificial intelligence that has been overtaking the world, that is leading from places like China and the United States. Right now, it seems like U.S. is in the lead, but China is very rapidly catching up. A giant region in the world that I don't see doing anything around this world-changing, insanely powerful piece is Europe. Okay? And from the different podcasts that I'm sure we all listen to, one of the common themes is like, hey, U.S. and China and even within the U.S. and within China, like, we're throwing money like maniacs to try and gain AI supremacy because that's incredibly important. What is Europe doing with artificial intelligence? And is this something that is viewed as important by the general public in Europe and the politicians? Like, what's going on with AI in Europe? Can you guys help me understand a little bit? Who wants to go first? Man, you guys are scared to touch this one.
No, I can go. Like, it's just I talked too much, and Neil was not heard too much.
You're good, bro.
Too much speaking time always.
German supremacy.
Yeah, I'm taking over this. This needs to be taken over. This thing. Yeah.
Yes.
What are they doing? Nothing, because we had a big brain drain all the time because regulations are so stupid and people are just leaving that really are smart to Dubai, like Neil said before, and also to the US. And this started in the 90s even, because Germany were the first ones who wanted to tax software immediately, and people that were just starting out said, hey guys, can we just figure this out first? How about we go to Silicon Valley? And suddenly they just started their companies there. Many Germans went over there as well. And those things. So is this relevant? I don't think so, because we have a war next to us right now. And I think this, like the security thing, will take over this topic for at least 4 years, more or less. And I think this, especially now with US pulling back, now it's destabilized. So we have different things to do than to care about AI. But another thing will be just a play ball in the future again, like before. Like the bigger powers that have more money will, in the end, kind of, that's what I see there, which is a harsh reality. But yeah, because it's interesting, even the regulations don't make sense that Europe put out. For example, the privacy policies they put out, they very, very strict, and they were so, great, we have this. And now everybody copies company data into ChatGPT to answer an email. Like, they use the service anyway. And of course, data is not secure. It's on ChatGPT servers, internal information about many, many companies, because nobody really enforces it. It's because it's too fresh. Like, we're too late to the party again. It's too, politicians don't know what to do at all. And so I'm not hopeful in that regard. Yeah.
Neil.
Yeah, I mean, Europe has been doing a lot with regards to AI regulation. It's that's the AI company, Regulatory AI. That's the huge company coming out of Europe. I mean, they were also busy with the cookies. Every time you go, if you're in Europe, you go on a website, it's always, you want to accept or you want not accept the cookies. And I'm like, where are my cookies? I'm hungry, but that's the thing. Also on Google, if you go and Google something, there is no maps anymore. They had to remove the maps because, it favors Google. I'm like, I don't care. My consumer experience is now 10 times worse. Why? Because you wanted to screw over an American company? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, yes, maybe have some rules here and there, but come on. I mean, Meta AI and all of that. Why can't we experience anything? It's like we are still fire, that's hot. It's like still stone age when it comes to AI in Europe. And again, it's such a shame, because the same thing again, if you have an idea, you're not going to do it in Europe, you're going to do it elsewhere, and rinse, repeat. And yeah, at the end of the day, you get screwed.
Do Europeans who are tech savvy put up with that, or do they use VPNs and just pretend that they're not there?
I was thinking about that more and more because, if I can't use, for example, Apple Intelligence or whatever, just to try it out even.
You don't want to try Apple Intelligence. It's fucking awful.
It is. I've tried it out already. But I just wanted to add something there. That's why technology is so important. That's why I'm highly in favor of Starlink. I have a Starlink installed in my Tesla, so I'm having Wi-Fi in my Tesla all the time. I can have independent internet kind of every time. I can just, nobody can do anything about this. I have a better connection because we don't have such a good mobile phone connections here in Germany as well. But something like that to be more independent, or the VPN, like you said, stuff like this, because it gets close to China. In that sense, they also need to have VPNs to access services from the US, for example. And that's what we need to do with AI stuff now, more or less. Some features are not even there, because obviously, why should companies care then? Google will say, oh, we don't put up with this. We would just make a European version that's just the basic version, and then the Americans enjoy all the benefits. Also with full self-driving, we take ages and ages, and we could enjoy the same thing. But I hope we have so many car accidents that they're willing to try this out finally and just get it done. Kind of, it's dire times, dark times ahead.
My worry with the European region is like, so, with the full pod, we've discussed all the different hardships and all the different complexities that are keeping Europe from reaching its full potential in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it's de-incentivizing the people from staying in the region that really want to make the region better in big ways. And artificial intelligence is just going to make that gap so much bigger, with places like the United States and China specifically being so hardcore about the investments that they're making, that a place like Europe, again, home to 700 million people, immense culture, immense traditions, talent, people, the biggest forcing function for progress and improvement and wealth creation and freedom and individual power is actively being suppressed because of irrational regulation that is embedded in the region, right? How is that even reversible? Like I know
I'm not sure about actively. That's the problem. Actively suppressed, I would say, clusterfucked because of the cluster. I'm not sure if.
No, I know people are not going out of their way to make AI worse.
Suppressing anything. It's just like the whole system.
The Germans getting afraid again. That, oh my God, here we go.
No. Not again.
Yeah, no, I 100%. No, I agree. What I should say is, like, it feels like it's active suppression because of how
it's complication. I would say that's how I would frame it. It's more complication. It's too difficult to
inescapable frustration.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the culture is too ingrained. Kind of. I don't have a solution for my situation as well in that sense, because I'm half American. I could jump over the mud. I'm always thinking about
come on,
that. And
water's warm.
Yeah.
Go for it, Neil.
Yeah.
No, it's a bit of the same with EVs and ICE vehicles, right? You don't want your ICE companies to get completely destroyed, because they cannot compete with Tesla or Chinese ones. But at the same time, you have your EV agenda that you have to make work. And then it's like, again, finding the right balance with subsidies. Again, in Europe, I think subsidies are slowly but surely going away because they see that sales are not as explosive as previously expected. So yeah, I don't know. It's quite strange, especially in Germany, because Germany is a huge country when it comes to car making. So yeah.
Yeah. Go for it, Hans.
I was just agreeing. Yep.
Yeah.
But it seems like dark times are ahead for Europe in a lot of ways. But I guess the other, perhaps there's reason to hope. I mean, I think that what Javier Milei is doing in Argentina is a crazy global experiment that if he continues, I think a lot of people will say that he's failing, that all he's doing right now is he's creating austerity and the people of Argentina are worse off now than they were a year ago or 2 years ago because there's not all this support for people. And, I look at it a different way. I think that there's nothing, this is just a common sense reality. There's nothing in life that is worth having that does not require discipline and sacrifice at least a high level, if not a very high level. That you can't have a good marriage without discipline and sacrifice. You can't have kids without discipline and sacrifice. You especially can't raise kids to be good human beings that you enjoy having a lifelong relationship without discipline and sacrifice. Like, all of these things take that. And what it appears to me is that Javier Milei is imposing some fiscal discipline and sacrificing some nice to haves for the most important things. And if this produces the types of results, if these short-term sacrifices produce long-term benefits that I think that it will over the next 5 years especially, then I think that's a data point that will be pretty hard to ignore on the international political stage, that, hey, we are facing hard times, and they proved that if you'll just let the people have freedom, that they can figure out the problems, that people are smart. I think that's going to be powerful. But, in line with the conversation we've been having, that is definitely a difficult, just because that works some places doesn't necessarily mean that it's compatible with every culture in every geographical location. And that's going to be a difficult challenge for Europe to grapple with.
Yeah. I think, and I'll throw it over to Jan here in a second. I think my biggest lesson from what's happening from the last 3-4 years with Milei, Trump, sort of this movement towards populism and getting the attempt to give the individual more power and more agency and removing regulations so that those individuals can become prolific. Ultimately, it has to be led by the people. It has to be led by the culture. There has to be a grassroots movement that places, it has to be from the bottom up. It can't just be plunked on top and then hope it works. It will never work. It has to be fundamental. And so the question becomes, from Europe's perspective, out of the 700 million people, can they reach a significant amount of a groundswell movement that wants Europe to be a leading region for technological supremacy and artificial intelligence supremacy? Without that, it ain't going to happen. That's the unfortunate truth. It has to be a grassroots movement for this to take hold.
Well, I mean, I think that grassroots movement is there. That's why these alternative parties are so popular and have to be suppressed in the way that they are. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the type of common sense leadership exists in those parties that will actively try to be a unifying force and really work on behalf of the good of all citizens. But I think the seeds of that political will exist. The question is, will the appropriate leadership rise to the mantle that is available for the taking if they would actually seize the moment?
That sums it up perfectly. That was a great observation in what you said here. That's the key point, because it's not about parties like the AfD in Germany, and I don't like that. It was a dumb idea that Elon Musk did interfere there kind of in the election. It's okay that he gives a platform, that's a different side, but endorsing it so much like in the US, that's a stretch a little bit, because that's interfering with our elections in the end. That's how the Germans view it. And that will have a ripple effect on Tesla as well, that people say, oh, no, I won't buy a Tesla. And I mean this people get, like, if it's too much, then too much influence there, people, it doesn't fly well here to do something like this. But in the end, overall, what I wanted to say is, I think it's important to get, because it's the people make these things, in the end are the ones who live together. It's not about the party we will elect. Will they bring us glory and stuff like this? I think it's important to have respectful discussions with each other, to talk, to listen, especially to listen to the people. Don't dismiss things like, oh no, that's just a right-wing idea or a left-wing idea. It's about let's figure out stuff, let's figure out some solutions and work together to make a brighter future in that sense. Also, we talk, you're over the pond. That's the real thing. It doesn't matter what our politicians discuss on top of that. The people on the surface are the ones that really strong arm everything in the end. And we have the deciding powers in our hands. We can elect and stuff like this. But I think it's very important not to dismiss people too much and to unify. Okay, great. Now Donald Trump is elected. Listen, look, is something going for the better, and just discuss and don't fight. That's the thing. Don't fight. Just discuss and have a common ground. You have to find common ground at some point, and that's important to at least have an open discussion without judgment. That's important, that nobody needs to fear, because this was way too much in the last years. In the last 10 years, that there were taboo topics and stuff like this that you couldn't talk about, that you are in a corner suddenly, left or right, it doesn't matter. It's stupid. The center went away. It was just eroded. And that's BS. I'm more centrist. It's important for me to have different viewpoints, different policies, are good or bad. Sometimes social policies are good. Sometimes economic policies are good. It depends. It's not as easy as to say, oh no, I'm just conservative with that. No, sometimes you have to have liberal ideas and conservative ideas, depending on the stages your country is also in. It's different. It changes all the time. Solutions for now are not the solutions for later. Maybe it changes. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents, and then I'm out of money.
Said. Well said. Neil, last word, my friend. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we come back to the finding the right balance. Perfect example was before Elon bought Twitter. There were a lot of things you cannot discuss, especially during the lockdowns and all of that. You said something, poof, you're gone. And when you start doing that, then whoever is left, you would think that, oh, if this is all that I see, this must be the truth. But no, that's not true, because maybe the truth has just been locked out, deleted. No, I mean, you don't get a platform, you don't get to say what you think. Then there starts to be a movement of, oh, things can go extremely right, things can go extremely left, but there's no real dialogue, there's no real discussion. Every time it's a great plan, let's say, hypothetically, Donald Trump says XYZ, but because it's Donald Trump, it's automatically bad. Or because it's, I don't know, Bernie Sanders, it's automatically bad. No, listen, give the guys a chance. Like, why are we putting words here and deeds here? It just doesn't make any sense. It's been like this for way too long. It's like, oh, if he talks nicely, that is much better than someone that might not talk as nicely, but has actually great plans that could improve our lives. We might not like the way that he says things, but okay, maybe we should try that. And that's the movement where I think, and I'm a bit more optimistic, where we're going right now. Where, okay, we care maybe a bit less about, oh, he's dressed up so nicely, he talks very nicely. No, we actually want actual results-based. With politicians as a whole, I think there should be an incentive system where results-based, if there are great results, you get paid and you can stay longer. If not, you can go out. There's no reason for you to be in politics for 40, 50 years. And what have you achieved? Insider trading. That's it. So, yeah.
Shout out U.S. Congress.
The GOAT, Nancy Pelosi.
The GOAT, bro.
Making the big bags.
GOAT. Hell yeah. Neil, Jan, where can people find you? Go for it.
Couch Investor on X, on YouTube. We're trying to get 100K on YouTube this year. Would be Would be great goal. Finally, that plaque can tell my mom and my grandmother, you see I achieved something in my life.
Go subscribe, Couch Investor. Jan, where can people find you?
I hope if we have still internet in Europe, then you can find me at TeslaFix on YouTube and also on X. I'm not as active, but I'm getting back on track soon. But that's why I had this delay, because I'm changing my setup. It's horrible. Work is too much, so I'm freezing right now my channel, but it will be coming on track soon. So yeah, looking forward to this. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.